Have you ever found yourself wondering whether that special someone shares your feelings? I want you to pause right now and think about that person who's been on your mind, that connection you've been hoping to build, that relationship you've been dreaming about. Now, imagine knowing with absolute certainty whether they feel the same way. Imagine the freedom that comes with clarity, the power of knowing when to invest your precious time and when to walk away with your dignity intact. Today, I'm going to share something transformative with you, something that will forever change how you navigate your relationships and protect your heart. I've walked this journey myself, and I've guided thousands through the fog of uncertainty to find clear skies of understanding. The truth can be painful, but living in delusion is far more damaging to your spirit and your future. I remember standing exactly where many of you are now, analyzing text messages until 3 a.m., overthinking casual interactions, creating elaborate explanations for behavior that deep down I knew revealed a painful truth. I've invested months, sometimes years, in pursuing connections with people who had already decided I wasn't their choice. And every minute spent in that pursuit was a minute stolen from finding someone who would choose me every day. The signs were always there. They practically screamed at me. But I chose not to listen because sometimes hope feels better than reality, until reality catches up and the crash is even harder. That's why I've dedicated my life to helping others see what I couldn't see, to recognize the signs early and preserve their self-respect. Let me be crystal clear. This message isn't about manipulation or trying to change someone's mind. It's about recognizing when someone has already made their decision so you can make yours. It's about honoring yourself enough to invest your heart where it has the potential to flourish. Before we dive deep into these 7 unmistakable signs, I want you to understand something fundamental. Someone's interest in you is not a reflection of your worth. Let me say that again. Someone's interest in you is not a reflection of your worth. Your value doesn't diminish because someone fails to see it. The right people will recognize your light without you having to constantly wave it in their face. So take a deep breath, open your mind and your heart. Some of what I'm about to share might feel uncomfortable, especially if you recognize these patterns in your current situation, but discomfort is often the price of growth. And on the other side of this understanding lies the freedom to find connections that mirror the love you're so capable of giving. Sign number 1, inconsistent communication that leaves you constantly wondering. When someone is genuinely interested in you, communication flows naturally. It doesn't feel like pulling teeth or waiting for water from a stone. I'm not talking about expecting immediate responses to every message. We all have lives and responsibilities. I'm talking about a pattern of delayed responses, one-word answers, and conversations that repeatedly die on the vine. I remember sending messages that would sit unanswered for days, only to receive a brief, "Sorry, been busy," with no follow-up questions or engagement. I created elaborate stories about how demanding their schedule must be, how they must be struggling with personal issues they weren't ready to share. I became an author of fiction in which I was always understanding, and they were always just temporarily distracted. But here's the truth I eventually had to face. In today's connected world, we make time for what matters to us. Even the busiest person checks their phone dozens of times daily. The CEO running a Fortune 500 company still finds time to call their spouse. The surgeon working 80-hour weeks still texts their best friend. We prioritize connections that matter to us. When someone is consistently inconsistent in their communication with you, they're sending a message louder than any words could express. They're showing you where you rank in their priorities. And while this realization might sting, it's also incredibly liberating. Because once you see it clearly, you can stop expending energy trying to climb higher on a list where you'll never reach the top. I've coached people who've spent months, sometimes years, trying to decipher the communication patterns of someone who simply wasn't invested. They'd analyze the timing between messages, the word choice, the use of emojis or lack thereof. They became detectives in their own love lives, searching for clues of interest that simply weren't there. What's particularly painful about this sign is how it keeps you hooked. Intermittent reinforcement, getting occasional responses just when you're about to give up, is one of the most powerful psychological triggers. It's the same mechanism that keeps people pulling slot machine levers. The unpredictable reward is more addictive than consistent gratification. But a relationship worth having isn't a gambling game. It shouldn't leave you constantly guessing, analyzing, and doubting. The right connection will bring you peace, not persistent anxiety. It will feel like coming home, not like waiting outside in the cold, hoping someone might eventually open the door. I encourage you to look honestly at your current communications. Are you always the initiator? Do responses come predictably, or do they arrive just often enough to keep you hanging on? Are the messages substantive and engaging, or brief and detached? The pattern tells a story, and it's time to read it accurately. Sign number 2, they're always busy when it comes to making actual plans. Now, everyone gets busy. That's just life. But when someone is consistently too occupied to see you, yet somehow finds time for other activities and people, they're making a choice that speaks volumes. I once pursued someone who had a remarkable talent for being unavailable. Every invitation I extended was met with a seemingly legitimate reason why they couldn't make it. Work deadlines, family obligations, previous commitments, even health issues. Any single excuse was perfectly reasonable, but collectively, they formed an undeniable pattern. Meanwhile, social media told a different story. There they were, attending concerts, enjoying dinners with friends, taking spontaneous weekend trips. Activities that surely required planning and time, the very resources that were supposedly too scarce to include me. What I failed to recognize then, but understand clearly now, is that I'm busy rarely means I have no time. More accurately, it means I'm choosing to use my time for other priorities. And when someone consistently chooses everything and everyone else over spending time with you, they've already answered the question you're afraid to ask. This doesn't mean someone needs to drop everything at your beck and call to prove their interest. Healthy relationships respect individual lives and commitments, but interest manifests as effort to carve out space, to find solutions rather than just offer excuses. It shows up as, I can't make Tuesday, but how about Thursday instead? Rather than just, I can't make it. I've seen this reality dawn on countless faces in my seminars. That moment when someone realizes they've been chasing a mirage, a potential relationship that keeps appearing on the horizon but dissolves when approached. They recall all the canceled plans, the rain checks never cashed, the maybe next time promises that next time never came. And here's something crucial to understand. When someone repeatedly declines opportunities to spend time with you without offering alternatives, they're actually being kind in their own way. They're choosing the path of passive disinterest rather than direct rejection. Many of us do this. We hope the other person will eventually get the hint without forcing an uncomfortable conversation. So if you're facing this pattern, recognize the kindness hidden within it. They're giving you the freedom to walk away with your dignity intact, without having to endure an explicit rejection. They're allowing you both to save face. The question is, will you accept this unspoken message, or will you continue pursuing someone who's already shown you their answer? Sign number 3, surface level engagement that never deepens. Think about your interactions with this person. Do they ask questions about your life, your dreams, your thoughts? Do they remember details you've shared previously? Do conversations evolve and deepen over time, or do they remain stuck in the safe territory of small talk and pleasantries? Interest manifests as curiosity. When someone is drawn to you, they naturally want to know more. They don't just hear your words, they listen for the meaning behind them. They follow up. They connect dots between conversations. They notice changes in your mood or enthusiasm. They invest in understanding your world. I spent nearly a year in what I thought was a developing relationship, only to realize our conversations hadn't progressed beyond the same superficial exchanges we'd had in our first week of knowing each other. My attempts to share deeper thoughts or feelings were either redirected to lighter topics or acknowledged with polite but brief responses that closed rather than opened doors. What makes this sign particularly deceptive is that surface-level engagement can still be pleasant and even seemingly warm. They might laugh at your jokes, respond with appropriate empathy to your directly stated feelings, and generally maintain cordial interactions. This can create the illusion of connection when there's actually just friendly politeness. True interest reveals itself in the questions asked, not just the responses given. It shows in remembered details. How did that presentation go? Or did you ever finish that book you were excited about? It appears in efforts to understand your perspective, especially when it differs from theirs. It demonstrates itself in vulnerability, reciprocated, not just accepted. I've worked with individuals who've maintained one-sided relationships for years, always being the one to dig deeper, to ask the meaningful questions, to remember the important details. They become emotional archaeologists, constantly excavating for connection, while the other person merely observes their efforts without participating. This imbalance is exhausting and ultimately unsustainable. A healthy connection involves mutual discovery, shared vulnerability, and reciprocal effort to understand. When you consistently feel like you're the only one trying to move beyond the surface, it's not just your imagination. It's a clear sign that the other person is comfortable keeping you at a specific distance. Consider your recent interactions. Who asks more questions? Who remembers more details? Who initiates deeper conversations? If the scales are consistently tipped in one direction, the message is there, not in what's being said, but in what remains unexplored between you. Sign number 4, body language that creates distance rather than intimacy. Our words can deceive, sometimes even ourselves, but our bodies often reveal truths we're not ready to verbalize. The physical cues someone displays in your presence speak volumes about their comfort and interest level. I've studied nonverbal communication extensively, and I've seen countless interactions where words said yes while bodies screamed no. The subtle shift of weight away during conversation. Arms crossed not in contemplation but in subconscious boundary setting. Eye contact that breaks too quickly or focuses just beyond you rather than directly connecting. When someone is drawn to you, their body naturally orients toward you like flowers turning towards sunlight. There's a softening in their expression and openness in their posture. Physical barriers, tables, purses, crossed arms, tend to be minimized rather than emphasized. Their personal space bubble may shrink, allowing closer proximity without discomfort. Conversely, disinterest manifests physically as well. Feet pointing toward exits rather than toward you, torso turned slightly away, increased blinking or throat clearing during moments that might lead to deeper connections. These aren't conscious rejections. They're automatic responses from our most primitive brain systems, designed to create distance from situations that don't align with our desires. I once believed I was building connection with someone whose words were always encouraging. They spoke of future plans, shared seemingly personal stories, laughed at my jokes. But in retrospect, I see now what my hopeful heart refused to notice. They never initiated physical contact, not even the casual touch on the arm that friends naturally exchange. They maintained a precise physical bubble that was never breached. When seated together, they invariably chose positions that placed objects between us. Their body was honest, even when social politeness dictated their words. And this pattern isn't uncommon. Many kind people who aren't interested romantically will still engage verbally to avoid hurting feelings, while their physical communication reveals their true comfort level. Next time you're with this person, observe without judgment. Notice where their feet point during conversation. Pay attention to whether they lean in when you speak or maintain rigid distance. See if their smile reaches their eyes or remains confined to their lips. Watch for mirroring, the natural tendency to subtly match the gestures and postures of someone we're connecting with. This isn't about finding fault or fabricating rejection. It's about reading the complete message being communicated, not just the convenient parts we want to hear. Your subconscious already registers these signals. I'm simply asking you to bring them into conscious awareness. Sign number 5, they never initiate contact or make the first move. Relationships thrive on reciprocity, the natural back and forth of effort and interest. When this balance is consistently one-sided, it reveals a fundamental mismatch in investment. Think about your most recent interactions with this person. How many were initiated by you versus them? Who suggested the last several meetings? Who reaches out first after periods of no contact? Who proposes plans or brings up the idea of spending time together? I've mentored many individuals trapped in the exhausting cycle of always being the initiator. They send the first text each morning. They propose every get-together. They restart conversations that have faded. They're constantly throwing conversational balls that the other person may catch and briefly toss back, but never throw on their own. This imbalance is particularly painful because each time you initiate, there's enough response to keep hope alive. They do answer your texts. They sometimes accept your invitations. They participate in the conversations you start. This creates just enough reinforcement to keep you in the cycle of reaching out while never addressing the fundamental question, why aren't they reaching for you? I experienced this personally with someone I was deeply interested in. For months, I convinced myself that they were just shy or uncertain or dealing with past relationship trauma that made them hesitant to show initiative. I created elaborate explanations for their passivity, never considering the simplest explanation. They just weren't that interested. The hardest truth I had to eventually face was that interest generates action. People find ways to connect with those they're drawn to, even the shy ones, even the busy ones, even the ones with complicated pasts. The form that initiative takes might vary based on personality and circumstance, but it exists in some form when genuine interest is present. This doesn't mean every interaction must be perfectly balanced. Life circumstances, personality differences, and communication styles can all create temporary imbalances. But over time, effort equilibrates between people who share mutual interest. Like a seesaw finding its center, the initiation of contact naturally distributes itself when both people want to stay connected. I encourage you to conduct a simple experiment. Allow space to develop naturally in your interactions with this person. Don't immediately fill silences. Don't automatically send the morning text. Don't be the one to suggest plans. Create room for their initiative to appear, if it exists. This isn't about playing games or manufacturing tests. It's about allowing the natural rhythm of reciprocity to reveal itself without your constant intervention. Either their interest will prompt them to reach across the space you've created, or the silence will tell you what you need to know. Remember, you deserve connections where your efforts are met with equal enthusiasm, where reaching out isn't a one-way exercise in hope, but a mutual expression of desire to remain connected. Anything less is an arrangement, not a relationship, and certainly not a foundation for lasting intimacy. Sign number 6, your relationship exists in isolation, never integrating into the larger context of their life. When someone sees potential for you in their future, they naturally begin to weave you into their existing world. They introduce you to friends, they mention family members, they reference you in conversations with others. They include you in their plans and considerations. Conversely, when someone compartmentalizes your relationship, keeping it carefully separated from other aspects of their life, they're creating a boundary that speaks volumes about how they categorize your connection. I spent nearly 2 years in what I believed was a developing relationship, only to gradually realize I had never met a single person important to them. No friends, no family members, no colleagues. Our interactions occurred exclusively in spaces that ensured we wouldn't encounter anyone from their established life. Coffee shops across town, restaurants well outside their normal routine, movie theaters in neighboring communities. At the time, I romanticized this separation. I told myself we were creating our own special world, unspoiled by outside influences. I convinced myself it was about savoring our connection without distractions. Looking back, I see the truth that was staring me in the face. I was being kept in a separate category, never intended to integrate into their authentic life. This separation manifests in other ways too. The absence of references to you in their social media, if they're otherwise active there. The lack of photos together. The way plans always seem to work around their real life rather than incorporating you into it. The careful scheduling that ensures no overlap between you and their established connections. What makes this sign particularly painful is how it can coexist with seemingly meaningful one-on-one interactions. The conversations may be deep, the emotional exchanges apparently genuine, the time together enjoyable, but without integration into their broader life, these experiences remain encapsulated moments that exist in their own bubble, separate from their authentic world. I've worked with countless individuals who've experienced this compartmentalization. They describe the mounting confusion of feeling significant during private moments, yet invisible in the larger context of someone's life. They question their perception, wondering if they're overreacting to what might simply be a desire for privacy or a naturally slow approach to relationship progression. But here's the truth I've observed repeatedly. When someone sees you as potentially significant in their life, the boundaries between private relationship and rest of life naturally become permeable. Not all at once, and not without appropriate pacing, but the movement is consistently toward integration rather than separation. Consider your current situation honestly. Have you been introduced to anyone important in their life? Do they reference you when talking about their plans or activities with others? Is there acknowledgement of your connection in contexts beyond your private interactions? Or does your relationship exist in its own carefully maintained bubble, touching nothing else in their world? This isn't about demanding premature integration or forcing unnatural timelines. It's about recognizing the natural progression of meaningful connections and being honest about whether yours is following that trajectory or remaining deliberately contained. Sign number 7, they tell you directly, but you're not listening. This might seem obvious, but it's remarkable how often direct communication gets reinterpreted, minimized, or ignored when it doesn't align with what we want to hear. I'm not looking for anything serious right now. I really value our friendship and focus on my career/healing/personal growth. I'm not ready for a relationship. I'm still figuring things out. These statements and others like them often get translated in the hopeful mind to mean, but you might be the exception, or, but that could change soon, or, but I'm open to seeing where this goes. I've been guilty of this selective hearing myself. Someone once told me clearly, I don't think I can give you what you're looking for, and I immediately began constructing elaborate interpretations of what they really meant. Perhaps they were testing my commitment. Maybe they were afraid of their own feelings. Possibly they had been hurt before and were protecting themselves. What they actually meant, as their consistent actions later confirmed, was exactly what they said. They couldn't give me what I was looking for. Full stop. No hidden meanings, no secret codes to decipher, just honest communication that I chose to complicate rather than accept. This tendency to rewrite someone's clear communication is particularly common when their words are delivered with kindness and care. We mistake gentleness for uncertainty, compassion for potential romantic interest. We hear the tone and ignore the content, especially when that content challenges what we want to believe. I've sat with people in counseling sessions as they've shown me text messages containing unambiguous statements of disinterest, yet they remained convinced there was a hidden message of hope between the lines. But they said it so nicely, they tell me, as if kindness somehow negates the actual meaning of the words chosen. Sometimes the clearest sign that someone isn't interested is that they've actually told you so, not in those exact words perhaps, but in statements that establish boundaries around your connection. Their communication might be wrapped in compassion, softened with genuine affection, or cushioned with appreciation for qualities they truly value in you. But beneath the gentle delivery lies a clear message if you're willing to hear it. I encourage you to revisit conversations where this person has described their feelings, their current life focus, or their view of your connection. Listen to their actual words, not your hopeful interpretation. Consider the possibility that they've been honest all along, but you've been translating their language into one that better fits your desires. This isn't about assuming rejection where none exists. It's about respecting someone enough to believe what they tell you about their own feelings and intentions, even when that truth doesn't match what you wish to hear.